Hey everybody, welcome back. Today I'm going to kind of revolve around the concept of Christianity and karate. See you later, Cat. He did not like that concept, I guess. And it's kind of two questions. The first one is, should a Christian fight? So I'm going to get into the undergirding of that. And should a Christian take martial arts, which is exclusively, well, not exclusively, but mainly came from the East. So there might be other kind of involvements with that. So I'm going to spend a good bit of time going over fighting in general, when you should not, if you should at all. And I'm going to kind of explore, after we get through the fighting concept, what the dangers exactly are when you dive into the martial arts, and not just the physical. Obviously, that's there whenever you take any kind of risk. So first, we're going to dive into the spiritual mainly. The first thing we have to ask ourselves is something worth fighting for? Is anything worth fighting for? And you could look at mankind's first commandments. There are two commandments given to mankind. Be fruitful and multiply. But before that, God put Adam in the garden to tend to it. Now, it's a garden. It is distinct from the rest of the realm of earth. So there's distinctions there, and Adam has no choice but to look at those distinctions. So you could look at, especially once you get Eve into that paradigm, you get into what does it look like to protect the garden from the outside chaos. And so Adam kind of toes the line right there. He should know what that looks like. So he's prepared to deal with enemies from without. So maybe that's Adam's role in this whole thing. You take a look at what's good and you understand what's not good. So things that are pretty obvious: child abuse, rape, seeing somebody being abused right in front of your face. Is that worth fighting for? Well, it should be. The reason why I think it's worth fighting for is something like that is if you do not do something, if you see a wrong and you do not act, it's like two things. It's like Adam being silent in the garden because you're not used to things within your realm harming you physically. The other thing is it's basically cultural. It's saying, I think that's okay in my culture if you don't do anything against it. And sometimes you have to prepare yourself for it. You have to ask yourself what kind of a person I am. Can I handle myself in that situation if it would come up? And that's when we start theory crafting and all that. And oftentimes, especially when it comes to the male part of the female and male paradigm, we need to be tested to know that we can withstand further tests, that kind of thing. So there's one line I borrowed from Jordan Peterson, and I think it's extremely valuable. I'm only taking part of it, though. It's a line that goes like this: if you are incapable of violence, you are absolutely at the mercy of anybody who is. He used cruelty also, and I would say, yeah, that's kind of right. If someone is going to put your child into the ground, are you going to just be like, that's all right, I'll just defend you, and you can go along your way. Nothing bad will happen from here. Well, there might have to be consequences if something like that were to happen, or if they're to threaten you, because you are also a character with multiple ties. You're not just yourself. You're also a brother, maybe a coworker, a father, etc., somebody's son, somebody's daughter. So there's a lot of other identities you have to play with here. You're not just losing yourself, you're losing pieces of other people when you yourself die. So that seems worthy of doing. We also have to look at the concepts of the heroes. The heroes are established in individual action. This is very replete in the book of Judges. If you look in Judges, eventually the people just kind of wind down because there's no king, there's no one to unify them, and they cry out when they're being oppressed. And that one person, a hero, comes and he unites the people, and they all overcome their oppressors, and then things kind of settle down because affluence kicks into Israel. Affluence and forgetting their history, something like that. So that's a bit of the Old Testament. So that's our underpinnings. Then you look at Christ. Christ was very much a man of action. He did things like turn over the money tables, because from what I understand in that picture, the reason he took action, he made a whip and kicked people out of the synagogue. There are there's three layers. There's multiple layers. There's the holiest of holies. There's where the Jews could come close, and then there are the Gentiles. So from what I understand, the picture that's painted to me is the entire area where the Gentiles were, that was all set up for sale for just the Jews. You come into this area where the Gentiles were, and you could buy your doves, you could buy your lambs, whatever you need to buy with money. And so Jesus got really upset about that. He's like, this entire place is meant for prayer, not for exchange. And that just infuriated him, that people were making money instead of studying how to live properly or how to live under a certain structure that would aim you correctly. Christ also said things like, sell your cloak and buy a sword. There's going to be times where you're going to have to make decisions, and there will be challenge and there will be danger, and you have to overcome, and you must pursue, and you must be diligent to the end. And then Paul said you must run your race to the end. That's willingly standing up against what's wrong. It's one of the mantras that I got from my first bosses when I worked at FedEx Ground was silence is acceptance. That one stuck with me for a very long time. If you see something happening right in front of your eyes and you don't get your phone out and you do nothing about it, that says you're fine with it. You're okay with that just happening, even though you could do something. There's another part of this that comes with Adam being silent in the garden and not saying no. There's something in the Old Testament that's not in, well, I guess even our modern laws, and that's the whole element of punishing sexual misconduct, like adulterers were stoned to death just like the murderers were. There's something about that. We definitely don't have those on equal footing at the moment. Here, you can divorce somebody just because you feel like it. And there's hardly any. We have the no-fault divorce system. That's a problem. But then who really pays for that? It's the children. It's the next generation. So it's one of those things like it was a tight box where you don't violate this once you're committed to somebody else. But who benefits from that are literally the next generations coming up. It might be restrictive for you here right now, but the idea is it's supposed to make things better in the future. And I've read a book back there. This is sort of an off example because the sexual elements, like the snake within the garden, if you want to look at that, it's easy to see your enemy if you know exactly who they are. And they're outside the garden. Those are all our enemies. Okay, but what about the ones within? You have to question that. I read a book on homosexuality and the Christian, and it was really interesting that nobody knows even to this day what causes homosexual attraction. We can understand the biological element for heterosexual, obviously, because that's how you propagate the species. Agencies within the male to see the female, and then eventually magic happens and kids just show up, right? Something like that. But that's how it is. And so what is with homosexuality? Where does that come from? The one thing they found out in that book was that if you have homosexual parents, you are 2% more likely to be homosexual yourself. Now, why does that matter? It's because if that's not controlled and allowed to propagate, something that's like outside of even the evolutionary spectrum, you could say it that way, because 2 men or 2 women cannot create a child biologically. If you say that's fine, we'll be okay with that, then that 2% cascades into 4%. And that 4% cascades into 8%. Just keeps going through the generations because you didn't say no up here. It's kind of like that. So the ramifications of not stepping in and fighting when fighting needs to be done, or enacting violence. It doesn't have to be a fight. Like, you see something happening, you smack the guy in the back of the head and knock him out. You know what I mean? You just stop evil action. If you don't stop evil action, not only does it have consequence then, it has consequences way later. But that might not seem cultural. That seems offensive, especially when you get into the sexual element. When you see something you know is not right, or you hear about something you know is not right, and you say in your mind, not my problem, or you don't have an inkling of what is right or wrong about it, like you gotta check yourself. Some things do not matter, right? Some things you just kind of let go. Like, to be honest, all the politics that are going on, they're so far away from you and me. If you're watching this video, what can you honestly do to alter all that stuff? What can you do in Ukraine right now? Unless you're in Ukraine or Russia watching this video, that'd be weird. You know, what can you really do? You can't do a whole lot. That's their job. But your job right now is to fight the battles that you can fight that are within arm's reach. So the stuff you say no to, the stuff you don't participate in, because that's also something you could choose not to fight in general as a rule or a principle, not be involved in politics, not be involved in the local school area, let your city go to trash, not be part of volunteer, you know what I mean? Not help out things as you should. Come on. And that's the prayer, forgive me for what we have done, and for what we have left undone, because what you've left undone can always be infinite. Now, that's my spiel on that part of it. A Christian should fight when necessary, and that's when you sit on that line between order and chaos, or evil and good, and you have to understand both factions and choose the good. You can't just be like, whatever happens, happens. You have to choose the good and choose the future good using your best evidence and your best understanding. So the next part of it is, should a Christian take something like martial arts, which definitely has Eastern roots? Well, I actually did a bit of research into the other part of it. Why shouldn't a Christian take martial arts? And the reason why maybe you shouldn't, this guy gives I'll see if I can find it and put in the reference below. This guy gave a testimony about why you shouldn't take martial arts, because it could lead to things like demon possession. And the reason why I said demon possession, he was in a dojo that, in order to advance in the ranks, you had to beat everybody else to your level, like physically beat them in full contact sparring. And then you learn to channel and to focus and to empty yourself. So you're literally emptying your mind and your spirit. That's a problem from the Christian worldview because you're filled with the Spirit. So if you empty yourself, you're letting yourself open for anything to come in. So you have to be very careful with that kind of thing. I do not recommend emptying yourself. You are a character. Keep that. Maybe calm your mind. That's maybe something to think about. Meditate on something, but have a direction. Don't just be chaotic. Don't just let anything come in. It's not a really good idea. But as far as like the whole martial arts thing goes, like I take karate, Isshin-ryu karate. In this school system, you're learning how to master violence. It's serious. And there is respect paid properly to those who have gone before, especially the elders. There's bowing, the whole humility part of it. Yes, sir. No, sir. You address people properly. You learn how to treat others outside of the dojo with respect. It's really kind of cool. The whole concept of you all wear a uniform. You're unified in one thing. That's a certain ceremonial aspect of it. And this is something from Joseph Campbell, one of the last books it wasn't a written book, it was like a logged interview. He said the issue they're having in Detroit, and they're shooting each other all the time, and this is in the 1970s, 1980s, is because men have no ritual. There's no other, first off, the family's disintegrated, and then you don't have other men telling the young men, you do this, and you got it. You've made it. You are now a man. There's like a crossing point. That is what as far as I can tell, that's what the black belt is in martial arts. Like once you get the black belt, it doesn't seem like you really change, but you're now in that role. So you begin to adopt that role, and you can see, now you have a different perspective. You see yourself compared to the other students, like where they start. And you actually realize how capable you are to the person who does not practice this stuff. And when violence actually does happen and come upon you, you can have that confidence that you are equipped as best you can be against the chaos and the unknown, because that is what a fight is. So those are my brief thoughts about the martial arts and Christianity. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Hope to see you next time. Subscribe down below. It helps me out a lot. And I'll see you next time. Take care.